Good morning, everyone. I am Ria Ramanik, and we are continuing with our subject that is BPSC 144 Introduction to South Asia. So, we are learning about South Asia as a region and what are the problems they are facing, what are the challenges they are facing. So, that is what we are learning from our previous sessions. Today, we will be completing this subject, and only we are left with two units, that is, Unit 14 SARC and Unit 15. So we will be starting with Unit 14, which is all about SARC. So what is SARC? SARC stands for South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. So SARC was basically founded by the countries involved in this South Asian region, and it was founded in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, on 8th of December 1985. So SARC stands for South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. This is something to be remembered. Its secretariat is based in Kathmandu, Nepal. Do remember that SARC is a organization, is an institution which is controlled by all the countries from South Asia region. So that is why their founding place is different, their secretariat is different, but all these countries are part of South Asian region. So, who are the members of SARC? There are eight members, namely Afghanistan first. Afghanistan inducted in the year 2006. Initially, it was not there. In 2006, it joined SARC. So, starting with Afghanistan, we have Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. So, these are the eight members of SARC, and the SARC's idea was itself put on the table by Bangladesh President Ziaur Rahman in the late 1970s. So, why Ziaur Rahman thought about this SARC organization? Because it was needed for the smaller neighboring countries of India to contain the hegemonistic attitude of India, because India was the most powerful, strongest, economically well off country and big in terms of its geographical extent. So that is why the small South Asian neighbors of India were very fearful because of the hegemonistic attitude of India. So that is why they basically Ziaur Rahman thought about of an organization through which these countries, the smaller countries, can cooperate with them. So the South Asian region is one of the most densely populated region. Along with that, this region is one of the most fertile areas. So, South Asia as a region is most densely populated, as we already learned about this. But also, this area is the most first fertile area because of the availability of so many rivers and fresh water. So, the members of this grouping have a lot in common. So, why they have lot in common? Because they have a shared history and shared geography. How? Why? How can we say that we have a shared history? So, starting from Indus Valley civilization, we the countries of this region saw that also they all are a victim in the hands of the colonial empire ruled by Britishers. Not only Britishers, initially there were many other European countries also, but majorly it was British, which lasted long, and that is why we all, basically all the countries, are governed by the colonial empire at some point of time. So we have a shared history of colonialism, and also we share our geography. How? For example, we share Thar Desert. India has a portion of Thar Desert. Also, Thar Desert is available in Pakistan. So Thar Desert is with Pakistan also, India also. Along with that, we have Himalayas, which is shared by many other countries apart from India. And also, there are many rivers which flows through not only one country but maybe two or three countries along with other features. So we can say that these countries in this region has a shared history and shared geography. There is a cultural and civilizational heritage which provides the platform to pursue their common interest. So we can see here that the cultural heritage of these countries of the region are quite similar, and also they have common traditions, dress, food, and culture and political aspects, thereby synerging their actions. So this is how they are all connected. So all the SAARC countries have also common problems and issues. So what are these common problems that all the SAARC countries are facing? The first is poverty, illiteracy, malnutrition, natural disasters, internal conflicts, industrial and technological backwardness, low GDP, and poor socio-economic condition. So, all these problems were common with all the countries of the South Asia. So, all the 8 countries we have learned in our previous slide are facing these problems, which includes poverty, illiteracy, malnutrition, natural disasters, internal conflicts, industrial and technological backwardness, low GDP, and poor socio-economic conditions. India dominates the grouping because of its size, population, economy, technological superiority, and scientific progress, etc. So, why SARC's idea came into being? Because they want to contain the hegemonistic attitude of India, and President Ziaur Rahman came with this idea. So why India dominate the other small countries? Because India is big in size, its population is huge, its economy is huge, they have technological superiority and also scientific progress along with other features. So this is why India is the most powerful country in this entire region. Now we will be learning about charter and its principles. So SARC was established with two primary objectives. So, what are these two primary objectives? The first one is to promote regional integration in South Asia by improving connectivity and people to people relations. So, we should not forget that the countries which comprises the South Asia are inherently connected to each other since a very long time. Suppose, for example, we if we can say that India after uh, independence, it became India as a country. But before the independence happened, before the partition, India comprised of the areas of Pakistan and Bangladesh. So we can say that there is a kind of connectivity with these countries now, and also many people from those areas also have people to people relations. So the basic idea of uh, South Asians was to promote the regional integration because they have shared history, shared geography. People are from the same families even before the partition. So there were many closed connections between these countries. Also, the second point is to promote economic integration of South Asia countries by reducing trade barriers. So, because all these nations are facing the same problems like poverty, literacy, etc., so they want to promote economic integration of South Asian countries by reducing trade barriers. So, these were the two primary objectives. Just a second. All right. SARC developed a charter which would guide its functioning based on few ideas. So, SARC together they formed a charter through which they can govern themselves. So, what is there in that charter? It is the sovereign equality, territorial integrity, political independence, non-interference in domestic matters. So these are few points that has been addressed in the charter, and it was agreed upon that every country should be respecting the sovereign equality, territorial integrity. They will also work for political independence and non-interference. So these were the basic principles of those SARC charters, and the charter bodies are the main mechanisms of SARC. So based upon these principles, the SARC used to work. These include the Summit, Council of Ministers, Standing Committee, Programming Committee, Technical Committees, and Action Committees. So there are many committees who are working on different aspects, and they are taking care of different problems that these countries are facing. They are they are providing programs, they are introducing many programs, technicalities that should be known by these countries. The summit is the highest decision making authority in SAARC. So when we say that who can make decisions, it is the summit organized by SAARC where all the member countries meets. So there, that summit is the highest decision making authority. Also, the member state hosting the summit assumes the chair of the association until the next such meeting hosted by another member state. So each year, there is a rotation of hosting these summits. And when, suppose if the summit is happening in India, so the Indian will be chairing that program, that summit. So next time it will be maybe Pakistan, maybe Sri Lanka, and their leaders will be chairing the sessions. So, the key outcome of the SAARC summit is the declaration, and it contains what is declaration? Declaration contains decisions, directives of the heads of the state or government to strengthen the regional cooperation in the agreed areas. So, the main basic aim of South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation SAARC is to make regional or strengthen the regional cooperation among the countries for their collective growth. That is the main aim. So, SAARC operates on the principle of consensus, means that decisions at all levels shall be taken on the basis of consensus. Consensus means when everyone is agreed on a particular topic. So, bilateral and contentious issues shall be excluded from the deliberation. Because we have a shared history, there are many incidents where the countries of South Asia became enemy of each other. They have rivalries, they have hostile relations, and during SAARC summits, they try to exclude these contentious issues so that they can work solely on their regional cooperation. Now, let's talk about all the summits and the important outcomes. So, what are the summits and their important outcomes? SAARC summits are held biannually and are hosted by the member states in alphabetical order. So, how these summits are being hosted? In alphabetical order. And in 1985, it was in Dhaka that these countries unanimously issue a declaration for the creation of SAARC. So, SAARC started from Dhaka. So, first of all, it was Dhaka. And why Dhaka? Because Bangladesh was the first country in the list of alphabetical order, because by that time, Afghanistan didn't join. Afghanistan joined in 2006, which we have already discussed in our previous slides. So, because of that, the first order before the advent of Afghanistan was Bangladesh. And that is why the declaration for the creation of SAARC was took place in Dhaka, Bangladesh. The second summit of SAARC was held at Bangalore. At this summit, they institutionalized SAARC by establishing a permanent secretariat to coordinate the implementation of the SAARC program. So, the summit called upon the member states not to allow their territories to be used for terrorist activities. So, in this second summit, what was the factor which they were discussing? That territories should not be given to the terrorist activities by any country, and the leaders agreed to cooperate in combating and eliminating terrorism from the region. Now, let's come to the third SAARC summit, which held in Kathmandu 1987. It that greatly contributed to the creation of an atmosphere conducive to the strengthening of the process of consolidation of the gains of SAARC. So, at sidelines, high-level India-Pak dialogue at various levels and several rounds of talks between Indian PM Mr. Rajiv Gandhi and President Jayawardena of Sri Lanka was possible. Also, in the fourth SAARC summit, which was held in Islamabad 1988, it talks about the elimination of menace of drugs and terrorism. So, what issues come up? So, as we go year by year, we can see that what are the concerns which we should address, and that became the topic for that summit. So the leaders welcomed the establishment of South Asian Food Security Reserve to assist each other in food emergency situations. So there are many situations of drought and floods, and because of that, they talked about the South Asian Food Security Reserve. In the fifth SAARC summit, it held in Malé, Maldives in 1990. The leaders of SAARC countries agreed to initiate steps for launching joint ventures in cottage industries and handicrafts to set the stage for promoting collective self-reliance in the region. So this particular summit talks about cottage industries and handicrafts. The sixth SAARC summit held at Colombo 1991, where the leaders agreed to liberalize the trade in the region and have a call for greater cooperation and interaction among member states to combat terrorism in the region. So the six SAARC summits was held in Colombo. In the seventh SAARC summit, again it was the time when Bangladesh should host it. So again in the seventh SAARC summit held in Dhaka 1993, it endorsed the SAPTA. Do remember this South Asian Preferential Trade Agreement for the liberalization of trade. So this was a very important summit. The other notable decision taken at the summit included establishment of the South Asian Developmental Fund (SADF). Again, the 8th SAARC summit was held in New Delhi in 1995. The members agreed to operationalize SAPTA by 8 December 1995. The summit also decided to establish SAFTA. Before it was SAPTA, it is SAFTA, which stands for South Asian Free Trade Area. The previous one in the 7th summit, it was South Asian Preferential Trade Agreement. This time it is SAFTA, which stands for South Asian Free Trade Area, to promote intra-regional trade. Now let's again come to the 9th SAARC summit held in Malé 1997. So it asserted that the sub-regional cooperation, instead of being abandoned, should be further extended. The members also hold they agreed upon informal political consultations to reduce the tension in the region. So do remember why we are talking about these tension in the region, because of the happenings that is going on day by day in this particular region, whether it's the war like situation between the rival countries, whether the third party is interfering in our region's country. So there are many things happening in the background, and that is what attracting the leaders of the SAARC to discuss upon. So the 10th summit was held in Colombo 1998. The leaders agreed for coordination of SAARC position before the WTO and encouragement of sub-regional cooperation. The 11th summit was held in Kathmandu, Nepal in the year 2002. The leaders reiterated their support to the United Nations Security Council legislation and called on all states to prevent and suppress the financing of terrorist acts by criminalizing the collection of funds for such acts. So these were the 11th summit. Let's move on to the 12th summit. In the 12th summit, held in Islamabad, Pakistan in 2004, leaders pledged to enhance regional cooperation as well as collective efforts to fight against poverty and terrorism. So, because terrorism became a very big issue for this region in by the year 2004, and poverty is still there, so that is why the topic or the theme for that year's summit was against the fight against the poverty and terrorism. The 13th summit held in Dhaka 2005, leaders endorsed the SAARC development goals to alleviate poverty. Poverty, terrorism, these were the common thing that as a challenge that this South Asian region is facing. The important outcome of the 14th summit held at Delhi was in terms of two very important intergovernmental agreements. So, the summit held in Delhi, India, the 14th one in the year 2007, became very important because it establishes the SAARC Food Bank and also South Asian University. So, South Asian University is still functioning and is one of the most prestigious university in our country. So these two were the establishments done after this 14th summit held in India, Delhi. The food bank was to be developed as an exemplary model of regional cooperation to collectively meet our region's food shortages in times of emergencies and natural calamities. So, if suppose any country is facing natural calamities and they are facing hunger issues, at that time, this food bank will be helping that country, where all other countries have unitedly kept their food grains for emergency situations. Suppose in Sri Lanka faced tsunami kind of situation, and that time people were the environment was very chaotic. People were running here and there to save their lives. At that point of time, because of tsunami, there was very destruction happened in Sri Lanka and other parts of coastal region in India. So at that time, it could be helpful for them if there is a food bank from where they can get all the food items for the needies. It also the 14th summit established the South Asian University, which meant to be developed as a center of excellence in higher education for the entire region. So who can apply in South Asian University? All the South Asian nation countries students can apply in this university. So was to be yet another milestone in the history of SARC. This collaboration with the countries upon an university is a very big achievement for SARC. The 15th summit held in 2008 in Colombo concluded with the adoption of Colombo Declaration on Food Security. So, climate change was the central issue of the 16th Thimphu Summit, Thimphu, Bhutan, held in 2010. The summit's theme was towards a green and happy South Asia. So, the theme of 16th summit was the towards a green and happy South Asia. The members signed a SARC convention on cooperation on environment to tackle the problem of climate change. In Addu, Maldives, the 17th SARC summit was held in 2011. The leaders agreed to finalize the regional railways agreement to convene the expert group meeting on motor vehicle agreement in order to harness the full potential of economic opportunities. Let's talk about the 18th SARC summit held in Kathmandu 2014. So SARC has had no summit level meeting since then. The next meeting has been called off due to India-Pakistan tensions, which was scheduled to be held in Islamabad November 2016. So because of the tension like situation between the relation between India and Pakistan, so this meeting has been called off. However, following Pakistan's involvement in Uri terror attack on September 2016, India expressed its inability to participate in the summit. So India refused to participate in the summit after the Uri terror attack happened, done by the Pakistani terrorist troops towards the Indian army. Soon after, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Bhutan, Maldives, and Sri Lanka also pulled out of the summit, supporting India against terrorism. Citing fears of regional insecurity caused by Pakistan and a lack of conducive environment for the talks. So, in a situation where a country is attacking, where a country's terrorist groups is attacking another country's army, at that point when they have rivalries, they have historical, history of rivalry. So at that point of time, it is not conducive to have an environment where they can sit and talk, because there will be many animosity, hostilities between the two countries. Now, let's start with knowing the regional centers. Let's start with SARC Agriculture Center, SAC, Dhaka. SAC, the SARC Agricultural Center, the full form, was established in the year 1989 with the mandate to provide timely, relevant, and universal access to information and knowledge resources to all the agricultural practitioners of the SARC members country, and why it is being done to achieve their respective goals through networking, agriculture, knowledge, and information systems by adopting appropriate information and communication technologies, management practices, standards. So, what was the role that SARC Agricultural Center played? And it is important. Why? Because South Asian region is basically an agricultural region. where people are more into agricultural produces. Agriculture is the sector through which these countries are, known for. So that is why taking an advancement in agricultural center was a very good idea, and this is how they advanced this agricultural center. Next come the SARC Energy Center, Islamabad. So, SARC Energy Center, was established in the year 2006 with the mandate to provide technical inputs for the SARC working group meetings on energy, well facilitate accelerating the integration of energy strategies within the region by providing relevant information, state of the art technology and expertise. So energy became a very important source of development, and that is why this SARC Energy Center was established in 2006. Next comes the SARC Cultural Center, SCC, Colombo. SCC was established in 2009 with the mandate to promote regional unity through cultural integration and intercultural dialogue and contribute towards the preservation, conservation, and protection of South Asia's cultural heritage within the framework of the SARC Agenda for Culture. So, the culture, the tradition of the South Asian countries are very, very vibrant, and that is why it was important for these countries of the region to save their cultural heritage and to conserve that and protect that. And for that purpose, SARC Cultural Center was established. Next comes the SARC Tuberculosis and HIV/AIDS Center, Kathmandu. SARC Tuberculosis and HIV/AIDS Center. So the diseases, because the diseases become so popular, not popular in the sense, but very extensively. It was spreading across the region, irrespective of the territorial borders. So that is why there was a need to address this issue, and STAC was established in 1992 with the mandate to prevent and control tuberculosis in the region by coordinating efforts and to exchange of information, research, capacity building, and implement activities on the latest developments and findings in the field of tuberculosis in the region and elsewhere. So, because of the spreading up of these diseases in the entire South Asian region, it was needed to understand that we should share the information, share the formulas of the medicines, the research, so that all the countries of this particular region can work on this to control tuberculosis disease. Next comes the SARC Disaster Management Center, SDMC, Delhi. SDMC was re-established in November 2016 for expanding role by merging four erstwhile SARC centers. So, what are these four erstwhile SARC centers? The first is SARC Disaster Management Center, SARC Meteorological Research Center, SARC Forestry Center, and SARC Coastal Zone Management Center. So that, and what is the mandate is to support the disaster risk reduction initiatives through application of science and technology. So how to get rid of this, all the issues that they are facing, disaster management center, because of the disaster, because many of the countries in the South Asian region are covering the sea and Indian Ocean, whether it is the Arabian Sea or the Bay of Bengal. So there is a possibility of disaster from there. Also, the landslides because of the Himalayan mountains in the top. So that is the reason why there was a need to create a disaster management center. Now, let's talk about how to make SARC more effective. SARC should focus on trade, connectivity, and security. So, how can we make SARC more productive? Because of it can focus on trade, connectivity, and security. On the trade front, the emphasis has to be on effective implementation of what should be done. Free trade pact, first of all. Secondly, pairing the sensitive list Thirdly, eliminating the non-tariff barriers and harmonizing standards and custom procedures. Just a second. So, timeline for rail sea connectivity has to be determined and implemented seriously. There should be more frequent business and bureaucratic machineries meeting. And lastly, it should be with an objective to impart a political momentum for monitoring the implementation of members' commitments made at the summit. So, these are some, ways through which we can make SARC more effective. Additionally, there is also the need to develop a regional identity. Like European Union has a regional identity, South Asian region also has to develop a regional identity for themselves. And only a regional identity, why this is important? Because it will generate a regional approach and not the other way around. So there is a need of effective communication and public diplomacy so that they can reach out the students, the youth, the private media, think tanks, civil society, and institutions for economic development. So this would be very, very important to popularize the concept of regional cooperation and generate an interest among the people of the region. So it would essentially build an image of the organization, and also the establishment of various regional research institutions and the launching of the South Asian University can be considered as significant achievements in this regard. So there is a need to cooperate more. Now, let's talk about the relevance of SARC. Despite setbacks, SARC has achieved a modicum of success. So, it has provided a platform for representatives from member countries to meet, discuss important issues, something that may have been challenging to bilateral discussions. So, if you have bilateral discussions, you can't meet other countries together. So, this SARC provides a space for these, a platform for these countries to come together and discuss. India and Pakistan, for example, would struggle to publicly justify a meeting when tensions between the two are particularly high. So, because of the tensions, because of the hostilities between these two countries, bilateral meetings are not possible in this hostile situation. But SARC provides a common platform for all the countries to come together and discuss. So it provides a very good opportunity to mend or to amicably settle the issues. But representatives from both countries could come together under the banner of SARC. The bloc also made headways in signing agreements related to drug trafficking, education, poverty eradication, climate change, food security, and global COVID-19 crisis was also there when the region worked together and the region helped each other. The challenges and vulnerabilities posed by the pandemic has made the need to re-embrace regional understanding. So when all the countries, even all the countries of the world are facing the same problem, the disease, so there was a requirement, there was a need to work together in a collective group to help each other in this difficult situation. So South Asian countries must strive towards deeper regional integration with a focus on resilient recovery and building back better. On initiative of India's PM Narendra Modi, all the SARC countries hold a video conference in March 2020 to draw a joint roadmap to fight the coronavirus pandemic in the region. It has the potential to do far more, but that is contingent upon cooperation on key issues between the member states. If each and every members are, focusing on the principles that they have decided earlier about territorial integrity, non-interference, all these things, if maintained well, the SARC can also become a very important region. So, with this, we end our chapter 14, and now we are moving towards our last chapter from the subject, that is about Unit 15, Dynamics of South Asian Security. So, in this chapter, we will be learning about the security issues that South Asia region faces, and we will be learning about that in deep. To introduce the chapter, South Asia, at one point dubbed as the most dangerous region, is now considered as one of the insecure regions. So this is something to be keep in mind. The perilousness has increased with the onset of Taliban's rule in Afghanistan in August 2021. So, because of the terrorist groups' involvement in the country's day-to-day life, the region became very insecure. And security dynamics of South Asia is unique for various reasons. So there are many security dynamics as well, starting with India's predominance in the region, making it one country dominant. As I already told you, that there is a tendency of hegemony that came in India because that is the most powerful country in this entire region, most populous, more richer, more economically well off country. So there is a there is a predominance in the region of India. So secondly, presence of two adversarial nuclear weapon countries. This point is very important. Why? Because the two countries who are rivals of each other in this region, that is India and Pakistan, both of them are nuclear weapon country, and that makes the matter worse, along with another nuclear weapon power in the proximity. So China also shares border with India, and China is also a nuclear weapon country. So this region is very, there is a security dilemma that happens. Also, strategic location of the region in both continental and maritime domains. So India is situated, not only India, the countries of this entire South Asian region are situated in such a way that they are important for maritime domains and also continental domains. Fourthly, colonial past. So there is direct or indirect history of colonial past, as we have discussed, that these countries witnessed in this region. Also, one of the most populous and impoverished region, because of the population in South Asian region is the most populous one, also the most impoverished region in the entire world because of underdevelopment, poverty, hunger, etc. It witnessed or have been witnessing conventional and subconventional conflicts insistently. So there are many conflicts going on here and there with the neighbors. So that is there. Sandwiched between Golden Triangle and Golden Crescent, the two most prominent psychotropic drug producing regions. So this region, the South Asian region, is sandwiched between two, routes, the Golden Triangle and Golden Crescent. Significant presence of extra regional actors like the United States and China in strategic and economic domains. So there is also involvement, interference of United States and China in this region, which is further hampering the relation in the country. Now let's talk about the concept of security. The concept of security has evolved over a period of time and is fluid. So, what constitutes security is different and is liable to change along with spatio-temporal context. So, there is a very famous international relations thinker, Barry Buzan. He labeled security as an essentially contested concept. So, in that there is this two perspective through which we can understand security. The first one is the traditional sense, and the other one is the non-traditional sense. So, in the traditional sense, security is understood in military, strategic terms with its exclusive focus on the state and its interest in political and territorial self-preservation. So, traditional sense of security talks about territories, talks about saving the territory from the others, and also the political interest. And they talk about military arms, weapons. These are the things that traditional security talks about. According to Walter Lippmann, a nation is secure to the extent to which it is not in danger of having to sacrifice core values if it wishes to avoid war and is able, if challenged, to maintain them by victory in such a war. So, according to Walter Lippmann, we should be balanced so that we should not, sacrifice our core values, our, in the sense, the country's core values, and their security should not be such challenge that there is a possibility of war. So, in conflictual sense, Ian Bellamy defines security as a relative freedom from war coupled with a relatively high expectations that defeat will not be a consequence of any war that should occur. So, this is how they have defined security. Now, we will be contextualizing South Asia starting with geostrategic context. So, of the five regions of South Asia, Asian continent, West Asia, South Asia, East Asia, Central Asia, and Southeast Asia. These are the five regions of Asian continent. South Asia's strategic location is significant. So, among these five, South Asia's strategic location is very, very significant, and it is one of the most densely populated region of the world, and around one fourth of the global population packed in just 3.5% of land area. So just imagine the population is so huge, but the space is so less for them. So the region comprises of eight countries. We are repeatedly studying this because this is very important. Because what are the countries who are comprising this region is important as a student to know. So Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka are the countries, and there are two seas: Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal, and one ocean, that is Indian Ocean. So we are covered with all these countries and the seas. So, like in the international system, small states constitute majority in terms of number of South Asia, and the region is very populous but one of the most poorest. So, despite similar cultural attributes, the region is least integrated. So, we have so many cultural similarities, tradition similarities with each other, but we are least integrated. So India is undisputably the regional power, as we have already discussed in our previous slides that what were the reason behind that. It makes the region India dominant in everywhere, like in territory because it is one of the largest country in the region. Population, India is the most populous country in the world. Next comes the economic strength. India's economy is quite well off than other countries in the region. Military might, India is militarily very strong. Nuclear power, India is a nuclear power country. Even India is using advanced technology, and there are many other factors which make India a dominant country in the region. Pakistan, because of its nuclear and military power, is not considered a small state. Do remember that Pakistan is not considered a small state because it has a quite well military power, and also the country is nuclear weapon country, but weaker in all other aspects. In all other aspects we discussed in our previous point, Pakistan is weaker other than the military strength and nuclear power. So, in terms of land area, India's size is more than all other countries in the region put together, and India is three times more populous and economically strong. Other, like for example, in comparison to other countries. So, in trade volume, the gap is huge between India and its South Asian colleagues. So, there is a very big gap between the all the factors as compared to India and other small countries. So, in terms of military strength, India has more than one third of combined military personnel. Okay, and it is situated between energy rich West Asia and energy demanding East Asia. So, South Asia is an important connecting port. West Asia is having energy, for example, oil, petrol, and other things, and East Asia is energy demanding region. So, India and the other neighboring countries of India, which comprises of South Asia, falls in between these two regions, and it became an important connecting port. Hence, China has given utmost importance to the region in its Belt and Road Initiative. Now, let's talk about the political context. The countries of the region are governed by different types of governmental systems. There is democracy, constitutional monarchy, authoritarian, and even religious. India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Nepal. These countries have adopted the parliamentary form of democracy. Sri Lanka and Maldives have presidential form of democracy. Bhutan is a constitutional monarchy. Afghanistan has recently declared itself as emirate under Taliban, which is a terrorist organization. The region has come a long way in gaining its political maturity. Pakistan has been witnessing civilian governments completing full terms without military coup. So there was a time when Pakistan was going through on one hand in a civilian government and the other a military coup. So Bangladesh is now politically stable than ever before. An Indian federal government are steady, although witnessing considerable influence from regional parties. Nepal got a republican constitution as fairly stable. Sri Lanka, though displays democratic authoritarianism on and off, has got a firm grip over secessionist forces. Maldives has credibly been enjoying democracy, although afflicted by political bickering among the political parties. Bhutan has been the most stable country in the region, and it advertises the concept of gross national happiness as against gross national product. So there is a difference with other countries in Bhutan. Afghanistan has been facing turmoil over 3 decades in a row, and Taliban regime and external intervention. So Afghanistan is the most, is going through a terrible condition. There is destruction because of all the turmoil that Afghanistan is facing for last 3 decades. Next comes the economic context. Due to high population density, there is a significant strain on resources that are already scarce. At the same time, the region has good potential of demographic and dividend in various forms. So, for example, huge consumer market, good supply of cheap labor, whether it is technical or non-technical, are and abundant human resources is available in this area, is in this region. So two-thirds of the region's economy is with India. So this is also a very important point to note down, that region's economy's two-third part is with India, and all of its neighbors have trade deficit with India. But ironically, despite the trade volume that is on the increasing trend, India's trade with the countries of the region is not above 4% of its global trade. And this is a point of concern. The region overall depends on the external supply for its energy needs and is vulnerable to global developments. At the same time, the region is one of the largest recipient of foreign exchange due to outward economic migration. Also, the region is highly vulnerable to natural disasters, as we have already learned that because of floods, droughts, landslides, cyclones, tsunami, this region is highly vulnerable to natural disasters, which is ultimately impacting the economic condition of the countries. Also, the region has skewed presence in the service sector, especially the business process outsourcing. Now let's talk about the socio-cultural context. The fact that South Asia is home to many cultural traditions, the region generally referred to as a microcosm of multicultural world. There are so many languages. There are more than 1,000 languages that has been spoken. There are many religious groups here. There is also hierarchical social structures like caste system which prevail in this region. But there is integrated. This region is very culturally powerful because it manifested in literature, music, cinema, dance, art, drama, paintings, architecture, and food. So, this is how these countries are united in this sense because they have a shared cultural base. So, this has been the thing. And now we will be learning about the security dynamics of South Asia. Let's talk about the traditional security dynamics. So, traditional security threats are those that threaten the state. It talks about its in territorial integrity, sovereignty, population by means of military force and armaments, war, alliances, balance of power. So the military force is trained and professional. Armaments use are either conventional or nuclear or both. And military alliances and balance of power are aimed at increasing the deterrence value. So, traditional security dynamics have conventional conflicts included. So, there are two major countries in the region, that is India and Pakistan. They have fought 4 wars: 1947-48 during partition, 1965 Indo-Pak War due to Kashmir issue, 1971 the liberation of Bangladesh, and 1999 the Kargil conflict. So, of these wars, 3 were fought in and over Jammu and Kashmir. Also, the 1971 war was about the liberation of Bangladesh, which was earlier known as East Pakistan. So there are many military deaths that happened at that time, and also there is conventional conflicts because of the Siachen glacier, and there is also similarities of the conflicts with India and China as well, though China is not a part of South Asia, but it very much interferes in the regions, you know uh, regions, all the happenings what is going on, and its interference shapes the relationship of the countries of this region with each other. So both the countries, India and China, fought a war in 1962, and there has always been a hostile relation since then with China. Next comes the nuclear dimension. The conventional conflict are now complicated because the countries have nuclear weapons, and China became a nuclear weapon in the year 1964 after 10 years India, and then Pakistan in 1998. So all three countries have more than 100 nuclear warheads each, and corresponding missile delivery systems. So this is a very very fearful situation where three major countries, the neighbors, having nuclear weapons. So we can say that this became a very important issue. Next comes the non-traditional security dynamics. So the non-traditional security threats are those threatens the basic survival of well-being of the individual citizens of a country. So traditional security was about the state, the territories, the borders of the country. This non-traditional security is concerned about the basic survival of human beings. So according to Mehboob ul Haq, security is not just about territory or nation, but security of people in their jobs, home and communities. So this is the major difference between the traditional security and the non-traditional security, what Mehboob ul Haq defines. So, according to Melis Caballero, non-traditional security threats are challenges to the survival and the well-being of peoples and states that arises primarily out of non-military sources such as climate change, cross-border environmental degradation, resource depletion, infectious diseases, for example, COVID-19, then natural disasters, irregular migration, food shortages, people smuggling, drug trafficking, and other forms. So let's talk about few non-traditional security dynamics. The first is terrorism. So this South Asian region stands next to the only West Asia in number of attacks and deaths due to terrorism, and which is a very big concern. So almost all countries in the regions have faced some kind of terrorism violence, and basically India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Afghanistan is high in terms and number of attacks and casualties, and the region also faces the traditional